All right, you're in for a real treat now. We're going to bring up onto the stage one of the other gurus. I know I said there's no gurus, but I reckon this guy. No, he's going to hate me saying that. Come on up, Maxie. Come up and say hello to everyone on the sun. Max is not a morning person. Max is not a morning person, but we had to shuffle the schedule around a few times, so he's not my best friend right now. But here goes, Max Igan.
Hello, can you hear me? We're working. We are. Good morning, folks. As he said, I'm really not a morning person, so we'll just see how we go with all this. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Max Igan. My website is thecrowhouse.com. I'm sure many of you have been there. The title of today's talk is Deprogramming the Collective, the Rediscovery of the Self. I think it's important that people get deprogrammed. I think people are programmed into a false version of reality, mainly because they've been given a false version of history, so they have a false version of who and what they are. I think it's very important that we rediscover that. And I think the clue to it all is rediscovering yourself. I think that's the biggest solution that we have. I think there are a lot of major problems, but all of them, really ultimately that is the one problem. We've lost contact with ourselves. This is something that I want to get clear right from the start. For anybody who doesn't agree with that, well, I apologise. Well, not really, but that's just the way it is. It is a bullshit-free zone, and I may be addressing some topics here that people may disagree with, but hey, just wear it. That's the way I feel. So that's the way it is. We are in for a reality check today, folks, with many, many things, actually. So this is a beautiful world, folks. This is us. This is us. The reason I put that there, I actually took that the last time I was up on the moon myself. So as I said, it is a bullshit-free zone. And the reason I've used this shot of the moon, because that landscape in the foreground there, we're going to keep going with this planet until we turn this planet into something that looks like the moon if we don't pay attention to what our rulers are doing, what those people who have designed themselves and self-styled themselves as rulers are doing anyway. Not us, but what they are doing. These people will literally go on. They'll keep going. They'll keep harvesting resources from this planet. And they're so locked into the economic model and so locked into this corporate system that they'll keep going until they turn the Earth into the moon. And then they'll be going, oh my God, we need to find another planet to go and exploit because I still owe money to the bank. That's the way they think. That's literally the way they think, folks, and they'll just keep going. But this is a beautiful world. This really is a beautiful, beautiful world, and it has the potential to be everything we ever wanted it to be. I mean, look at this place. This is an incredible world, ladies and gentlemen. It really is. But we're doing things to it which aren't particularly good. We're turning it into a wasteland, and we're doing it by our own negligence, mostly, by our own laziness. That's the problem, is that people are negligent in as much as they won't look around them, they won't notice what's going on in their own surroundings, and they're obviously, ultimately too lazy to get involved very often. That's the biggest problem that we've got. Most people are too lazy to be responsible for themselves. They're too lazy to be free. That's the unfortunate thing. So we're at a crossroads at the moment. We really are. We could be going either direction. I believe that in this year, 2014, 2015, 2016, these 3 years, I think we're on the edge of a knife right now. We could go in any direction. It's all up to the choices that we make. Some people think this is the future. Love and light. If we just meditate, focus on what is positive, the world's going to turn into this beautiful ball of light. We're all going to turn into light beings and we're going to ascend to fifth dimension. I don't particularly agree with that, but that's what a lot of people think. There are other people who think that this is where we're going. Or perhaps this, if we're not already there. Or perhaps this, if we're not already there, and eventually probably even this. And I would suggest the latter is where we're going if we don't pay attention. And I think that we're very close to losing all of our freedoms on this planet. I think that's about how close we are. I think that pretty well describes human consciousness at the moment, folks. And I think we need to pay attention to it. There are other ways of doing things. There is another path that we could take, the path that leads back to ourselves. This is what we've got at the moment, folks. We've got a system of people farming. We've got human trafficking in the form of debt slavery. And it's ingrained into our systems since birth. Money and possessions in, people out. That's the way it goes. They give out loans, everybody gets in debt, and they take everything that you own. That's the way it is, folks. It's people farming via debt slavery. They trap you into the credit trap. That's what they do. You get lost in a wall, a sea of debt, never knowing what you're going to do with life. You just keep struggling through. You end up dragging this debt around you for the rest of your life. That is what your life is. And this is a good one as well. Education, isn't that great? Borrowed 26,000, paid back 32,000, still owes 45,000. That's called getting an education, folks. The government trying to help you. You've got to get the people educated so they can get out there and make a difference in the world, don't they? But people wake up to the fact that it's all a dream. That's the society that we have. And that's pretty well a great description of our society, I think. And the state of Australia today is a very good example of it. But they keep you going, folks. They teach you that if you work hard, if you really, really work hard your whole life, eventually you're going to get something at the end of it. That's what it's all about. You just got to work hard so you can have that little spot of freedom at the end, and that's what it's all about. And that's what we're sold, folks, but it's an illusion. It's not real at all. That's really what we've got, and that's where we're heading. And that's the unfortunate reality. Mind control, folks, is how we got there. Mind control is what keeps us there. There are so many things that lock us into this system, most especially the television set. The television teaches people what to think. It doesn't teach people how to think. I'm sure you all know this. But the television is the most insidious form of mind control that's ever been invented. And there are so many things they do to keep us programmed into this. The diet that we have, the diet that we feed our children. What are you feeding your kids, folks? These kids are getting aspartame, they're getting all sorts of things from a very, very early age. There's lots of things we can do to alleviate this. Look at this, the Define bottle, folks. Fruit-infused water. Get your kids off soft drinks at an early age. I love this stuff, I use it every day. There's so many steps we can take in our own home just to get our kids on the right track right from the word go. These things are great. You can get your kids to actually design their own fruit drinks and take them to school. It's fun for them. They want to start creating their own flavours. So it gets them right away from that soda pop mentality. You see the kids on soda pop running around the park completely hyped up. You see the kids on fruit-infused water having a great time. This is the sort of things that we need to be paying attention to at a very early age, because that's where the programming starts. It starts with your children. Fluoride is another thing. I'm sure I don't have to go through this with people. There's so much wrong with fluoride in the water. Fluoride was used in the gulags. Stalin used it in the gulags. He found that he could lower his guards by a factor of 3 if he put fluoride in the water. In other words, if he had 100 guards looking after a prison camp, by putting fluoride in the water, he could drop that number down to 25. Because that's how docile the people become. Even if they are angry about being in prison, they just can't think too clearly. They can't get organised. And they just sort of wander around going, it's all not right, but they don't really know why. That's what fluoride does, that's what it's for. Along with the education system, of course. You know, beautiful children, creative minds going in, and drones coming out. And that's what they wanted to do. The education system is designed to train people to accept authority, to train people to believe that the system is real, and to train people not to rock the status quo, not to affect the status quo. Everything's good, just leave it the way it is. You need people to look after you, you need the government, you need all of this stuff we've got for you. Just stay back, pay attention, do your job, we'll look after everything you do. That's what the education system trains people to do. And this is where we go. We work hard all of our lives and we end up with nothing. That's what the system is designed to do. See, how do you steal the world, folks? How do you steal the earth? Because you can't own the earth. There's a lot of people that might disagree with that. There's a brother of mine who'll be talking later today. So we have very different opinions on ownership. But I don't believe you can own anything. I think that the earth has been here for 4.6 billion years. It's going to be here for another probably 100 billion. You're here for 50 or 100. Do the math. You don't own shit. The earth owns you. The earth owns you. You don't own the earth. The earth owns you. You're just here in a temporary existence. And you're custodians of a certain section of the planet. You may be custodians of certain possessions. I may be the custodian of this remote control. I guarantee this thing's plastic. It's going to be here long after I do. And if I won't leave my house because I'm scared someone will steal my remote control, then the remote control owns me. That's the way it works. Your possessions own you. You get all this stuff, and then you're too scared to travel or do anything because you're scared someone will steal your stuff. The stuff owns you. You don't own the stuff, and it's just stuff. It's not you. We lose track of that. We lose track of ourselves. We're sold the American dream, or the Australian dream. It's all the one dream. You're going to see a lot of stuff here that's directed at America today. in these slides that I'm showing. This is all done actually. A lot of the slides you're going to be seeing today is done by a fantastic artist by the name of David Dees. He's got a website called deesillustration.com or ddees.com. No one says it better than this guy if you want political art. He's a fantastic artist and he's a good friend and he does great artwork. But the dream that they sell you folks, the American dream, the Australian dream, it's all the one dream. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're from. It's all the same thing. If you come from Western country, then it's all the same dream. And that's the dream they sell us, folks. That's what we end up at. This guy's pretty happy. He's there, he's got his TV, he's got his chips, he's got his beer, he's got his remote control, and his team's winning. He doesn't even notice that he's chained to a wall of debt. That's the life that we've got. This is the American dream that they sold us. Of course, if we want to tell him about that, we can go to one of these free speech zones now, scream out to him from a distance, hey mate, you might be enslaved. Because this is the way we're going. That's the way it is in the United States now. They actually have designated free speech areas, folks. Ridiculous, isn't it? And this is another one. Unbonded males. Unbonded males. We have a particularly interesting situation in Western society. There's a lot of talk of the mutilation of female genitalia in the Arab world. We hear about this. We want to go in and save the women in Afghanistan because of genital mutilation and all sorts of stuff that goes on there so the women can't enjoy sex. What about male genital mutilation that happens in the Western world? We don't think about that because it's aesthetically pleasing to people. There's research that indicates that the foreskin of the male, the foreskin of a male contains more blood vessels than the entire rest of the human body. Did you know that? More blood vessels in the foreskin than anywhere else, the whole human body combined. They cut this off. Why? Because it's aesthetically pleasing. There's research that indicates when a man has sex with a woman, if the man has a foreskin, there is an electrical charge that happens. There is a connection that's made between the foreskin and the brainstem of the woman, causing a bonding between the man and woman. A really, really deep bonding that most men don't get. And I'm not saying if you don't have a foreskin, you can't bond with your wife. That's not what I'm saying. But there is a specific bond that takes place if the foreskin is left on, and I would suggest that's why it's been removed. Because we have a society of unbonded males. You don't see women running around picking up guns and shooting people. Because the first act that a man remembers in his life subconsciously is an act of violence that was carried out against him. The removal of the most active pleasure centre of his body. And that's been done for a very specific reason, folks, and it shows an incredible knowledge of male anatomy that someone would have done this. I think people should be looking into that. This guy nailed it. It's called the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it, folks. That's what we've been sold, and I think people need to pay attention. Anyone know George Carlin? George Carlin was the comedian's comedian. This man is one of my absolute heroes, absolute legend of a man. But we're trained, folks, and we're caught in this quagmire of bullshit that's fed to us by the mainstream media. It's very difficult to rise above it. It's very difficult to even bring this information to people because people just don't know how to handle it because they're programmed by their television. And no matter what you tell people, they think, well, if it was real, it'd be on the television. The television would tell me. But when I was a kid, you go, you can't believe that, it was on TV. Now, people don't believe it unless it's on TV. So it's been a very, very interesting shift in perspective from people. So, three things that really keep us locked into this society and keep us locked into this reality are what I refer to as psychic pathogens that infect us. The first one, of course, is the economic pathogen. The economic pathogen teaches people that everything is about money. And they teach people that even time is money. Everything you do has to have a dollar value. You can't give to people, you've got to sell things to people. Anything you might create, you've got to sell. It's all about money. Everything's about money. You measure yourself by money. You've got to go out and spend your life working to accumulate as much of this stuff as you can. That is called success. What you do with your money is you feed the social pathogen. You climb the rungs on the social ladder because you believe that once you've attained more rungs, you're a better person than everybody else. Hey, I'm a better person than you because I have a bigger front door than you. I have a nicer car. I can buy my wife nicer jewellery. So therefore, we have more value than you. That's the way it is. It's pathological thinking. And we measure ourselves, we measure our own worth by whatever rung we've been able to attain on the social ladder. And this is very, very dangerous because what we do is we lock ourselves in a bubble and we just allow people to be discarded on the rungs below us. We always do. And we pander and mollycoddle to the people above us because we believe that when the rung falls out from beneath our feet, these people are going to help us, they're going to lift us up. Well, we didn't do it to the people below us, so why would we think the people above us are going to do that? This is the way we think, folks. It's pathological thinking. And then when we really get discarded and everything turns to shit and we're out in the gutter and we're just, oh my God, the world is so bad, then it's okay for us to be that way because the religious pathogen says that it has to be that way. Everything has to turn to hell. We've got to have Armageddon on Earth, and the Earth is going to turn into hell so that Superman can come down and save you. That's what's going to happen when everything is absolute rock bottom. Jesus is going to come and he's going to save you. And it's okay for you to suffer because suffering brings redemption. Only the meek shall inherit the earth. All of this rubbish that you're fed, so that it's okay to be discarded. And the religious pathogen affects people in all manner of ways, folks. This is a mechanism that they use to wipe out third world countries. What they do is they send the missionaries in there and they introduce them to Christianity. And they get all the people locked into this Christian system where they're all devoted to the church, and then the corporations come in behind the church and they rape the country. In South America, you've got natural shamanistic traditions and tribal cultures out there that are being infected by Christianity. And I say infected because it is an infection. These shaman are going out there and they're believing that Jesus is going to come and save them so much, and that the people practicing the old ways are locked into the way of the devil. And they go out into the forest and they murder their own shaman. They murder their own tribespeople because they won't convert to Christianity. This is how it affects the people, folks. I was in Peru in 2012. I was there last year again, but in 2012 I was there. There was one village I was in where they have a loudspeaker which announces the piki-pikis, the boats. It announces the arrival of the boats at the harbour every day. And this loudspeaker starts at 5 a.m. in the morning and goes till 10 p.m. at night with evangelists screaming out about Jesus to the village. This town of 2,000 people, there are 30 churches in this town of 2,000 people. What's going on here, folks? You know, this is absolutely pathological thinking, and people are trained to be this way. Now, they support the economic model. They support the acquisition of stuff. That's all it's about, is stuff, usually on the blood of children from other countries. And they get locked into the religious pathogen because Jesus is going to come and save them. Of course, the church will tell you that it's all good and you should pray for the children. If you do pray, then the children will be saved. Not a problem. This guy's got it right. You all pray for the kids while I hold on to this $100,000 cross. And people are blind to it, folks. They keep their eyes blind to it, many things. Chemtrails in the sky. Don't even get me started on chemtrails. I don't have time to talk about chemtrails today, but that's another issue. There's so many issues, folks. If you'd like to know something about chemtrails and what they're actually doing with chemtrails, actually there's a film I've got out in the foyer for free called Transformation. You can download it free from my website, or you can grab a DVD out there where I discuss the topic of chemtrails quite deeply. But it's an interesting topic. Celebrity worship as well. This is another thing, folks. We live our lives, but we don't live our lives. We live other people's lives. We watch television and we look at these celebrities and we follow what they're doing and we live their lives. But what do? When you watch television, you watch all these television shows and you live vicariously through the people on the TV show. What's the one thing the people on television aren't doing? Watching television. That's what they're not doing, folks. You know? But that's what you're doing. You're just watching their lives and going, wow, I can identify with that person or that girl or that man or that wife or that husband or whatever because I can live my life through them. But you miss out on your own life by doing so. That's what we do. And it goes on, folks. People in, people out. Money in, possessions in, people out. Like I said, how do you steal the world, folks? You train people into believing they can own part of the world. If I can trick you into believing that you could actually own something which is here permanently and you're temporary, then if I want to steal the world, if I can trick you into owning it, then all I have to do is enslave you to an economic model which is designed to implode, which is what this financial system is, and eventually everything you believe you own will transfer into my hands because I issue the currency, and you'll think that I own it. But it's a meme, it's a lie. No one can own anything. But you can't steal the world until you can trick people into believing ownership is real. And because people do believe ownership is real, the world is being stolen from them. Everybody's enslaved to debt. Everybody even thinks they own their land. You don't own your land, folks. Even if you think you do, even under their system, you don't own your land. And I'm sure my brother Mark will tell you about that later on in the day. You really don't own the land. If you live in Australia, nobody in Australia owns their land, folks. But there is a better way. There is a far better way. The thing with me, I've been awake for a really long time. I woke up when I was 4 years old. I was walking up in the forest with my mother, and I said, this is great, living up here. Why can't we come and live up here? We have to live down in town for it. It's horrible down there. She said, well, we can't come and live here because we don't own the land. I'm like, own the land? How can you own the land? And she started saying, well, you'll understand a bit more when you get older. And I'm thinking, no, I'm never going to understand this. I'm never going to understand this. I'm walking around the yard with my teddy bear. My teddy bear was my best friend when I was 4 years old. And I'm walking around the yard with my teddy bear. And I'm holding my teddy bear and I'm walking around and going, Teddy, it's all fucked up. I really was. At 4 years old, I'm going, it's all fucked up, Teddy. I've been born into the wrong world. I'm not supposed to be here. How did this happen? Why is the world like this? And I'm talking to my teddy bear going, it's all fucked up. You know? And I couldn't understand it. I just couldn't understand it. I didn't understand my friends. I didn't understand my parents. I didn't understand my siblings. I didn't understand anybody. I just couldn't figure it out. It wasn't until I went to school, when I was 5 years old, I went to school, I met my first friend, a little girl by the name of Helen Kimber. She was the most wonderful person I'd ever met. She had the brightest eyes and the quickest smile, and she was real. She was the first real person that I ever met. I was 5 years old, and I went to school, and I just met this girl, and we were just best friends straight away. And we hung out together for about a week. And then I got that shit kicked out of me at school. I didn't know why. All the other kids at school didn't like me. I didn't know why they didn't like me. And suddenly I wasn't allowed to see my friend Helen anymore, and all of these things happened, and she had to move away, and all sorts of things happened. I was never allowed to see this little girl anymore. I got pushed towards other kids. And I couldn't understand why. And it wasn't until I was probably 17 or 18 years old, and I thought back on my childhood, and I wondered about Helen, and I wondered why I was never allowed to play with this girl. And it was then that I realised she was black. I never realised when I was a child. I never saw it. It isn't that I didn't care she was black. I didn't see it. I didn't know she was black. Until I was 17, I looked back and I went, wow, she was dark-skinned. I don't know whether she was an Aboriginal or an African, or I think she might have come from India or something like that. She looked vaguely Caucasianish, you know, but she was dark-skinned, and I wasn't allowed to play with her. And that was a real shock for me, but it took me so long before I knew that. It took me years and years before I realised what the problem was, you know. And that's the world that we live in. Then I found this man. This man, I've got to tell you, if it wasn't for this guy, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. Frank Zappa kept me sane. And that may be a strange thing for people to think about when you think of Frank Zappa. But Frank Zappa said some wonderful things. There's a wonderful quote he said. He said, schools train people to be ignorant with style. They give you the equipment you need to be a functional ignoramus. American schools do not equip you to deal with things like logic. They don't give you the criteria with which to judge between good and bad in any medium or format, and they prepare you to be a usable victim for a military-industrial complex that needs manpower. As long as you're just smart enough to do a job and just dumb enough to swallow what they feed you, you're going to be all right. But if you go beyond that, you're going to have these grave doubts that give you stomach problems and headaches and make you want to go out and do something else. So I believe that schools mechanically and very specifically try to breed out any hint of creative thought in the kids that are coming up. He said that back in the 1970s, folks, and I think looking at the world today, I think he was damn right. But I found Frank Zappa at a particular important time in my life because I was being led down the garden path. I had really a dysfunctional childhood, so bad. I mean, I wouldn't want anyone to have my childhood. And by the time I got to 10 years old, I was just trying to find any way out that I could. And the one love that I had was music. And so I was being led down the path by these guys. I was being told that everything's nice and peace and love and roses, and if we all go and get stoned and talk to the Maharishna, then it's all going to be great, you know. The world's all going to change, you know. And then someone came along and they introduced me to a Frank Zappa album, and he said, hey, we're only in it for the money. And he also said that he had a problem. And it's cover, you look at this cover, he's saying, I've got a problem with the androgenization of the species. Why are the men being turned into women and the women being turned into men? And on the inside of the cover, he said up here, is this phase one of lumpy gravy? Because Frank saw a future that was being created where even the gravy was going to be cheap. You know, we're not going to get anything. Even the gravy is going to be lumpy. And it wasn't for Frank, I may have gone off on completely the wrong track, but at 10 years old, this man opened my eyes. And he said, this is the way the world is, this is why the world is the way it is, Max. And I heard this album and I just went, wow. And my whole life changed, and I became an activist from that point onwards. I was 10 years old. Frank also said the illusion of freedom will continue for as long as it's profitable to continue the illusion. At the point where the illusion becomes too expensive to maintain, they will take down the scenery, they'll move the tables and chairs out of the way, they'll pull back the curtains, and you'll see the brick wall at the back of the theatre. And that's why people are waking up, folks, because now they're seeing the brick wall at the back of the theatre. Yeah, people are waking up, but it's kind of for the wrong reason. You know, they should have woken up to themselves a long time ago. Now they're waking up to the fact that there's a wall being built around them, and they need to pay attention. And the wall takes many forms, folks, but it's global. It's a global war. There's a lot of problem that we have too with nationalism. We're all addressing our problem with our government. We're saying our problem in Australia is the Australian government. Now, the Australian government's part of one global corporation, folks. It's all the one government, okay? All you've got is one giant department store and different franchises. That's what the countries are. That's all it is, folks. It's one global economic model. We've got so many problems, it's ridiculous. How about these guys? What a great company, hey? Monsanto. And ain't that the truth? Either mankind will stop Monsanto or Monsanto will stop mankind. But this is the world, folks. This is Guantanamo Bay. The people that are put in there with no charge or trial put against them. Most of the people in Guantanamo Bay have not been charged with any crime. They're just suspected of terrorism. Gee, anybody can be suspected of terrorism, couldn't they? Anybody can be suspected of anything. But of course they can't let them out now because they're saying, oh, if we do let them out, they might turn into terrorists. I can't think why. Maybe they don't like the way we looked after them in jail. This is what America does to its prisoners now, folks. But now we can't let them out because they may become terrorists. Oh dear. How did that happen? What about this? We were disarmed in 1994, were we not? Why have our police gone from this to this since we were disarmed? Does anyone have a problem with this? This is the police in Spain exercising crowd control. That's what they do with crowd control these days, folks. It's global, what's happening. So we can't just think this is a nationalistic problem that we face. We do have big problems in this country, but we've got to stop seeing Australia as being something isolated from the rest of the world because it's a global problem. Carbon tax, don't even get me started on carbon tax. If anybody hasn't figured out this is a scam, well, I don't know. As I said, folks, it's happening all around the world. This is Palestine. This is the Palestinian-Israeli border. Notice how the bandages are half across the kids' eyes here, just to make it a little bit more uncomfortable. The reason the light is different is because this is the morning, this is the afternoon. The kid's been there all day. As you can see, these Palestinian children also make pretty good stools. You know, you put them there when you're shooting at the Palestinians, stops the Palestinians shooting back at you. And I'll return to Gaza in a little minute. This is, of course, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. What we're doing to our oceans because people aren't paying attention. And we get the news fed to us from the TV, we get all excited for a few days while it's in the headlines and then it goes away. It's still going. This is still leaking oil into the Gulf of Mexico. It's still going. What about this? This is the elephant in the living room, folks, Fukushima. TEPCO tells us it's pumping 300 tons of radioactive water into the ocean every day. TEPCO full of shit, so what's it really pumping into the ocean? I was speaking to Jeff Rentz the other day. He said it's around about 1,000 tons being released into the ocean every day. Reactors 1, 2 and 3 have melted down completely. They're detecting radiation in groundwater 75 feet below ground level. This is a potential extinction level event that no one is paying attention to. This is absolutely the elephant in the living room. I've been thinking maybe you could build a big mile-wide mycelium dam so the water has to flow through the mycelium. Maybe plant lots of hemp in the area. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't think anybody knows what to do with Fukushima. But it's going to continue until we start telling our governments or standing up and addressing it ourselves. That's the thing. We've got to remember what governments are too, folks. They're public trustees. They've got to do what we say, but we have to be organised enough to tell them. We have to be organised enough to let them know what we want them to do. We can't petition them. We can't ask them. We have to instruct them to do things for us, because this is where we're going. It's a sad situation. This is where we're going. This is the global community, folks. And this is how they do it. Hegelian dialectic. Has everyone heard of this? Hegelian dialectic. Many people call it problem, reaction, solution. It's actually thesis, antithesis, synthesis. This is how it works. Anyone recently hear about how violent things are in Byron Bay? A couple of years ago, they had an article in the news. Terribly violent town, Byron Bay, isn't it? Oh my God. We were in Byron. I was living in Byron Bay at the time. When that news article came about, let me tell you what happened in Byron Bay. There was a new police officer, a new police, head of police came to Byron Bay. His last post was Cabramatta in Sydney. His post before that was King's Cross in Sydney. And he came to Byron Bay and we've got to straighten this town up. Good old Byron Bay, it's such a threatening town, you know. And he said, we need surveillance cameras. We've got to have surveillance cameras in Byron Bay. All the shops arced up, all the locals arced up, said, no way, we don't need surveillance cameras in this town. So, okay, grumpy, we're not going to get our surveillance cameras. That was on the Friday. The next Wednesday, my friend and I, we'd gone into town, we saw a news crew set up at Johnson Street roundabout, filming down the main street. What's Channel 7 news crew doing in Byron Bay? We looked at each other and said, bet there's going to be some violence in town tonight. That night, sure enough, about 12 o'clock, there's the Channel 7 news team. They're set up, cordoned off an area next to the street crossing in the middle of town, so no one can come near their camera, focused on the street crossing. Right on cue, a couple of guys walk onto the street crossing, start a big brawl on the street crossing. The cameras get the whole lot on camera. It's on the news on Thursday night. Friday, the decision is passed for us to have surveillance cameras in Byron Bay. Funny that the guys on the crossing look suspiciously like off-duty police officers, and funny that I know somebody who works in the courthouse who told me that no one was charged and no one went to court over the incident. Hegelian dialectic, folks. They've done it recently in Queensland with the bikie laws. What they did was they arrested one bikie from one gang, one bikie from another gang. They told each gang member that it was the other gang member who dobbed on them, and they told them where they were going to be. So these two bike gangs went and clashed in the shopping centre where the police had told them where they were going to be. There was an altercation. Then within a week they rolled out this legislation. They just had to write because of it, which is about this thick, that was already ready, just waiting for the right incident to introduce a legislation, Hegelian dialectic. That's what it is, folks, and that's what the lead legislation is. If you read this legislation, the Vicious Lawless Association Disestablishment Bill, it has nothing to do with bike gangs, absolutely nothing to do with bike gangs. This legislation says that it will remove the possibility of parole from people who are arrested under this legislation. And this legislation says that these vicious lawless gangs are a corporation, an unincorporated association, a club or league, or any other group of 3 or more persons by whatever name called, whether associated formally or informally, whether the group is legal or illegal. Local chess club fits into that category. The Boy Scouts fit into that category. Your local knitting group fits into that category. And when you think of Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution, what's it going to take for someone to, say from Lock the Gate, to go and do something violent to somebody one day, and suddenly the whole Lock the Gate group is a violent lawless association? People say, why would they do this? Why would this happen? You know, well, there's a good lot of reasons why it would happen. But it's been introduced by this guy, this treacherous, treasonous, seditious, sociopathic, fascist little cretin by the name of Jared Blay. Didn't want to mix any words with that one. But he enacted it on behalf of this treacherous, treasonous, seditious, sociopathic, fascist little cretin by the name of Campbell Newman. And people would say, well, why did they do this, folks? Well, here's another thing. By the way, police in Mackay, recently arrested, 2 police in Mackay arrested for rape, deprivation of liberty. Looks like the Queensland Police are a violent lawless association. There's 2 members of this group that have just raped and abused someone. Therefore, I can name these people as a violent lawless association. They should be arrested and they should be put in jail. And I don't have to prove they're a violent lawless association, because under the lead legislation, they have to prove they're not. That's the thing with this legislation. You've got to prove that you're not guilty. How do you do that? How do you prove you're not guilty? See how crime's created, folks. You know how crime is created? You know where crime comes from? Crime comes from legislation. Every time a government writes a new law, they create a new crime. Think about it, Obamacare has just come in the United States. Barack Obama announced that with Obamacare comes the introduction of 40,000 new laws. This is the creation of 40,000 new crimes. That's the way it is. You know, you're walking on the grass, hang on, I've just made it illegal for you to walk on the grass. Now you walk on the grass, you've committed a crime. Why is it a crime? It's a crime because I wrote it down on a piece of paper that you can't do that anymore. Now it's a crime. That's how crime is created.
Your mic's not working, Max. If you just grab that microphone and point it a little bit more towards you, or maybe try from that. Yeah,
Okay, how's that?
yeah.
You hearing me better?
Yeah.
Okay. The creation of a law sees the creation of a crime. That's where crime comes from. It comes from the creation of laws. Now I wrote to Jared Blay, I actually posted a video. Anybody see it?
Yeah.
Asking Jared Blay to show cause why he shouldn't be held in breach of trust and prosecuted for crimes against humanity. Essentially what he should be prosecuted with is abuse of office. Because that's what he's done. He's abused the power that we've given him. Because we gave him the power to do this. And he wrote back to me this letter. Get this, he says here, dear Max, dear Mr. Max, he's made it personal, he's a nice guy, he's a nice man. A person charged under the new laws has the opportunity to prove that the organisation to which they are connected is not an organisation that indulges in criminal activity. How do you do that? Hey B, I'm accusing you of stealing milk bottle money, prove to me that you didn't. You can't. You can't. You can't prove you didn't do something. It's impossible. That's why the onus is always on the accuser to prove guilt with the accusation. Guilty until proven innocent is what we've got now, which is the exact opposite of what it should be. And it says here, a person who can prove this has a complete defence against the criminal offences created or aggravated by this legislation. The criminal offences created by this legislation. This would be great to use in court. According to Jared Blay, he's just created a crime. He told me in a letter he wrote me. He's just created the crimes with the legislation. This is what they do. Now people say to me, why would they do this? This is rubbish. Why would the government of Queensland be doing this? Well, the reason is, oh, by the way, this is another reason. Why would they introduce this? Did everyone see the letter that Jared Blay wrote to the Bligh government when they tried to introduce similar legislation? He wrote a scathing letter to the Bligh government saying this is too much. This is too much against human rights. I will not allow you to introduce this legislation. And then the Campbell-Newman government gets in and they introduce legislation which is even more repressive. And the reason why is because this is where it comes from. It's a United Nations directive. These people get into power and they think they've actually got power, and the United Nations says, no, you're going to do what you're told. You're just a bunch of puppets and we puppeteer you. That's the way it is. Recently they tried to have a referendum to give constitutional recognition to local councils. Why? Because local councils receive their directives from the Municipality Association of Australia, which receives its directives direct from the United Nations. If that referendum had passed and we had given local councils constitutional recognition, it would have served to undermine this country and hand control of this country over to the United Nations only covertly through the mechanism of the Municipality Association that controls local councils. That was the plan. That's why the state governments balked on it, because the state governments know that once this happens, they lose all power. They're there in name only. They have no power. It becomes little mini dictatorships all around the country, all controlled by the United Nations. And people say, why would this happen? Well, this is why it's happening, folks. Because many people may remember that a few years ago when the Bligh government was still in, Captain Bligh, what a lovely woman she was, she sold most of the Queensland's food bowl, the Darling Downs, to China. It's all been earmarked for coal mines. And after the Commonwealth Games, and they've shown how wonderful this place is, they're going to open the place up for mining operations. That's what they're going to do. They're going to turn Queensland into this, or perhaps this. Our food bowl, some of the most fertile farming land on earth. And when people go to protest this, they're going to find that there's going to be someone in their organisation that starts some violence. And as soon as they do, their organisation will be named as a Violent Laws Association, and people will be arrested across the board without charge or trial, and they'll be put into private prisons. That's what's going on, folks. What's it going to take for a police officer to infiltrate the Lock the Gate group, start some violence against some mining company, and then suddenly every farmer with a Lock the Gate on his sign belongs to a Violent Laws Association? And he has to prove that his organisation does not carry out violent acts, because that's the way the legislation works. That's what they're doing, folks. That's where it's going, on behalf of this guy. So what's the next logical step? It sounds like the next logical step. And this, have you heard of this? The TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, signed 2 weeks ago, I think. The Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement is, again, the consolidation of the corporation. The Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement basically turns the whole Pacific region into one big department store with these little franchises. The Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement says that any corporation that wants to come into this country and conduct mining operations or any type of activity at all can do whatever it wants. And if we have local legislation which interferes with these international companies, then these international companies have the legal right to sue our government for daring to interfere with their corporate rape of our environment. That's what the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement is. All I bring to you is free trade. Free trade's good, isn't it? Promotes growth. Promotes growth of monsters like the TPP, that's about it. How did that get in there? Which brings me to Gaza. And I want to spend a little bit of time on Gaza, and I apologise for any people I may upset with the information. Gaza is an incredibly important issue, and Palestine itself is an incredibly important issue. It's one of the most difficult issues to explain to people as well. It's one of the most misunderstood issues as well. This is modern Israel. This is Gaza Strip here. This is the West Bank. This is Golan Heights. Golan Heights, you'll notice, is actually in Syria. That's actually land that Israel's taken over into Syria. You hear those reports on the news about Syrians invading Israel and carrying out activities against Israel all the time. Syria never invaded Israel. Syria never attacked Israel. Israel is actually in Syria illegally. No one believes that that's their land, but Israel says it is, and it's not recognised as being their land. Syria's been trying to get that land back since about 1981. These blue areas around here are areas that are full of UN troops to hopefully prevent Israel's expansion into Lebanon and Syria the way they're trying to do. Gaza Strip and West Bank are what I want to focus on. Gaza Strip is actually the size of about Sydney Western Suburbs. That's the size of Gaza Strip. Probably Brisbane Western Suburbs is about the same size. I mean, the size of West Bank is about the same size. This is one of the most confusing issues that people have. People just don't understand what's going on in Israel and Palestine. People think, damn Middle Easterns, religious fanatics fighting over their wars. Why don't we just nuke the whole area? It's been going on since I was a kid. I'm sick of it. That's the way people think about it. But it's a very, very complicated issue. And you've got to ask yourself, or you really should know, who actually founded Israel and what it's all about. There was an area in the up above the Caspian Sea, that's the Black Sea, that's the Caspian Sea, called Khazaria. This area was a nation that formed around about 630 AD and went to about 900 AD. Around about 700 AD, these people adopted the faith of Judaism. They all converted to become Jews. They're all Western Europeans, white skin, blonde haired, blue eyed, all this sort of stuff, but they became Jews. Not Semitic Jews, just Jews. Semites, does anyone know what a Semite is? A Semite is a Middle Eastern person. Brown hair, black hair, brown eyes, dark skin. Arabs, these are Semites. Arabs, anybody from the Middle East, these are Semitic peoples. Okay? Very difficult to say a Palestinian is calling an Israeli an anti-Semite when a Palestinian is a Semite. These are Semitic people. But there was an area called Khazaria. It was a very, very warlike nation, and it adopted the Jewish faith back in 700 AD. They all converted to Jews. Around about 900 AD, they were attacked by all of their neighbours. All of the neighbours just got sick of them because they were a very, very warlike race of people. They kept attacking all of their neighbours because they're kind of psychopathic. They're like, we've got to attack and control everybody because they might want to control us someday. So we need to control them first. That's just kind of the mentality, kind of like what America's like now. That was their mentality. So they got kicked out of the area around about 900 AD, and they roamed around Europe looking for a country ever since. They adopted the Jewish faith, and they adopted, of course, the usurious Jewish monetary system, which was probably the big attraction for them adopting the faith, because of usury exists within the Jewish faith and gives them the ability to make a lot of money. And so they adopted that. They got kicked out in 900 AD. They kind of roamed around Europe looking for a place to go. And they eventually settled in Germany after being kicked out everywhere else. A lot of them started to move to Germany, and they took over the German financial system. By around about 1930, you had 1% of the German population who were Khazarian Jews, who controlled 99% of the resources in Germany. They were impoverishing the German people. And so something had to be done about it. This is also a paper written by Jewish scholars who talk about the Palestine and Israeli conflict, and they say here that our position is that Palestinians have a real grievance. Their homeland for over 1,000 years was taken without their consent and mostly by force during the creation of the State of Israel. All subsequent crimes on both sides inevitably stem from this original source. This is another book that talks about the Khazarian people. So the Khazarians wanted a place. They wanted a home for themselves. So they invented the Jewish race. Because there is no Jewish race, it's a faith. Judaism is a religion, it's not a race. The race is the Khazarian Jews, who are an actual race, they are Khazarians, who need a home. And so they hijacked the faith and they moved down to Palestine and took over Palestine, the Holy Land of Israel. I was actually, after this talk, I was actually approached by a cameraman in the last gig we did in Melbourne. The little cameraman who was filming everything was a Jew. And he came up to me after my speech and he said to me, "Thank you so much for speaking the truth about what's actually going on in Israel. I'm a Semitic Jew. I come from the Holy Land of Israel. All of my ancestors came from the Holy Land of Israel, and we got along with the Palestinians for thousands of years until Europe got involved in 1947 or 1946. That's what happened. See, the people who are populating Israel now are not Semitic Jews. They're Khazarians. They're converts who converted to the Jewish faith in 700 AD and have been roaming around looking for a country ever since. There was an agreement, there was a declaration that was brought to Lord Rothschild in 1914 or 1917 by a man called James Balfour, who said that they would like to form a state of Israel, where the Holy Land of Israel is. They would like to have access to Palestine so they could divvy it up and turn it into their own country, because we need a country, because we're a race. We're the most downtrodden race in history, and we need a country. But it's not a race, it's a religion. No religions own countries, it's a faith. So they delivered this declaration to James Balfour delivered it to Lord Rothschild in 1917. He said, "Look, His Majesty's government agrees that we can have land in Palestine. Not that it's England's to give away, but they agree we can all go there, and so it's all looking good. So we're going to help you in World War I. It's all good, as long as you give us Palestine." But Britain reneged on the deal because it wasn't really theirs to give, and so it went further than that. Then in 1933, a lot of people don't know this either. In 1933, World Jewry declared war on Germany. This was because when Hitler's regime took over, okay, 1% of the population controls 99% of the resources in the country of Germany. So Hitler said, okay, you've got to be German to own a business in Germany. He didn't just say no Jews. He said you've got to be German to own a business in Germany. And he closed all of the foreign-owned businesses, put control of the country back into the hands of the German people. Within 3 years, he created 6 million jobs, created the autobahns, invented the Volkswagen, and gave everybody a car. They loved him. They absolutely loved him. When he went into Croatia, the Croatians who I spoke to over there said that the greatest time of their history was when Hitler came to freedom from their dictator. So I don't know. Maybe we're not getting the true story about World War II, but the important thing about this is that it says Judea declares war on Germany in 1933. And that's what they did. They put global economic sanctions on Germany, and within 6 months, they had reduced the German economy back to a state of complete and utter impoverishment, actually worse than what it was before Hitler's government took control. Within 6 months, they'd done this. Another thing, another interesting part of this is this down here. There's a line down here, which is very telling, actually. It says that antagonisms have been submerged in one common aim to stand by the 600,000 Jews of Germany. So unless these guys breed like rabbits, I don't know how that became 6 million by the end of World War II. Another one says here is that they declare war on the German persecutors of their co-religionists. This is a daily Express, Rothschild-owned Jewish newspaper. They're calling the Jews their co-religionists back in 1933. They're not saying it was a race, they're saying it was a religion back in 1933. And so that's what they've done. They've crippled the German economy. Between March and August 1933, they reduced it back to oblivion. And so a deal was struck, the transfer agreement. This was an agreement which would see the removal of 60,000 Jews, 60,000 German Jews from Germany, saw them loaded on trains and saw them shipped down to Palestine in 1933. They were given little markings. They were put in camps, they were taken, they were put on trains, they were moved to Palestine. Documented. You can find the paper trail that leads to this. This book is written by a Jewish scholar, Edmund Black. This is not an anti-Semite, this is a Jewish scholar saying this is what happened to my people. The deal was struck by this man, who gave the Jews $100 million, which equaled about $800 million by 2012 dollars, or 2014 dollars, gave them $100 million, sent them down to Palestine. Please get out of Germany, leave us alone, we want our economy back. And you can actually find headlines, which I should have included here, which was the Zionists of England shouting Heil Hitler in the streets during World War II because they supported Hitler because Hitler had just given them $100 million and sent them all down to Palestine. The coin was minted to commemorate the event. We see a Nazi swastika on one side and a Star of David on the other, and the inscription, Ein Nazi fährt nach Palästina. A Nazi goes to Palestine. Documented. I have no problem. Jews got loaded on trains and taken away. Yeah, they did. Where were they going? Were they going to death camps? Were they going to Palestine? Because I got proof that many of them went to Palestine, at least 60,000 of them. And I'm not saying the Holocaust didn't happen. I'm not saying Jews weren't persecuted during World War II in Germany. Because if you look at the global situation in Germany at the time, once war broke out and everything turned to shit in Germany, no doubt that these people who were having such a hard time saw the Jews as the fault of their problem, and they probably persecuted them because that's what people do in war. I'm not saying the Holocaust didn't happen, I'm just saying there's a lot of figures that need clearing up. The figure of 600,000 needs clearing up. The fact that this coin exists needs clearing up. The fact that the transfer agreement happened needs clearing up. It needs addressing. And there's another book by Ilan Pape, a Jewish historian, who documents what happened when they went down to Palestine. What happened when these Khazarians went down there and started reclaiming their ancestral lands, which weren't their ancestral lands at all. You know, Benjamin Netanyahu, these people, they're not Semites, they're white-skinned Western European. How is a Palestinian calling Benjamin Netanyahu a criminal? How is that anti-Semitic? The Palestinians are Semite, Benjamin Netanyahu isn't. How does that work? They've hijacked the language, they've hijacked everything. And here is a coin from 1927. So you speak to Jews, Israelis, and they'll tell you Palestine never existed, it's always been Israel. Palestine never existed. These people are just rabble, come from Jordan, come from Saudi Arabia, just rabble, useless rabble that moved in here, tried to steal Israel. It's our land, it's always been our land. That's what they say. Here's a coin from 1927, which tells a very different story. And it's got, notice the inscription is in English, Hebrew, and Arabic. The Holy Land of Israel always existed in Palestine. And by the way, here's another figure. This is December 2nd, 1914. Consider the plight of more than 6 million Jews. 1914 is World War I. They're saying 6 million Jews are in trouble in Europe. We got 1916. Now they're holding a memorial service, memorising the 6 million Jews who died in Europe. This is 1916 now. 6 million have now died since 1914. Now in 1921, they're concerned about the 6 million Jews in Russia facing extermination. Okay, these Jews keep moving around and they keep going alive and dead and alive and dead. There's a lot going on with these people, right? And then we've got here the plight of 6 million Jews, May 1939. You've got the JNF to raise 6 million for Palestine. Thought Palestine didn't exist. Thought there was never a Palestine, you know? So it just goes on. This figure of 6 million has been bandied around a lot. And like I said, I'm not saying the Holocaust didn't exist. I just want these figures cleared up, because I see a little bit of an issue. I'll have some questions at the end. If you don't mind, I'll lose track if we go questions now. This was the way it was. This is the way it looked. This was the Holy Land of Israel that existed in Palestine in 1933 or 1946. Then the UN got involved and decided we better give these people their own country, and they divided it into this. So they took over half of Palestine and gave it to Israel. In 1967, Israel decided they needed a little bit more land, so they took a little bit more, and since 1967 to 2010, it's become this. But of course, Israel's the victim. We're always hearing how Israel is the victim in this case, but Israel is not the victim. Israel's been stealing land ever since they got the place. This is Gaza Strip today. Well, that's actually Gaza Strip in about 2005, I think that was. The blue sections there in Gaza, these are Israeli settlements in Gaza, and they got sick of their land being stolen because Israel just comes and basically bulldozes your houses and takes your land. What it does is it goes into a suburb, often they'll go and they'll dig a moat around a suburb, they'll take all the people out, they'll put them on the outside of the suburb, usually about midnight, and they say, hey, you don't live here anymore. Go. Where do we go? We don't care, just go. You don't live here anymore. So you find that there's thousands of them actually living down in the lower steppes of Israel, in villages that are completely unattended. They've got no water, they've got no sewage, they've got no amenities, they've got nothing. They're just discarded people living in the desert. And they got sick of that, so they voted for a new government in 2007. There was a government, there's two sections in Israel, there's Fatah and there's Hamas. It's kind of like Liberal and Labour. Fatah was Yasser Arafat's government, and Hamas was a government that was created by Israel as a to combat Fatah, to get Fatah and get Yasser Arafat out of power. What happened was the people in Gaza Strip decided they'd vote for Hamas rather than Fatah, and Hamas said, well, now that we're in control, we're going to kick Israel out, and we're going to stop all the checkpoints. So Israel said, well, okay, it's a terrorist government, and they built a wall around the place. But people didn't like the checkpoints. They didn't like the checkpoints in Gaza Strip, because Israelis didn't treat them very nice at the checkpoints. They just never have. And that's the way it is in West Bank now. That's always the way it's been. And these are the bulldozers they use. They've got militarised bulldozers that they come and destroy your houses with. One person who knows very much about these bulldozers is a lady called Rachel Corey. Rachel Corey is probably best known for her 5th grade speech, which I'll play you a section of now.
I'm here for other children. I'm here because I care. I'm here because children everywhere are suffering, and because 40,000 people die each day from hunger. I'm here because those people are mostly children. We have got to understand that the poor are all around us, and we're ignoring them. We have got to understand that these deaths are preventable. We have got to understand that people in third world countries think and care and smile and cry just like us. We have got to understand that they are us. We are them. My dream is to stop hunger by the year 2000. My dream is to give the poor a chance. My dream is to save the 40,000 people who die each day. My dream can and will come true if we all look into the future and see the light that shines there.
Rachel Corey was run over by an Israeli bulldozer. Rachel was defending a doctor's house. The doctor and his 3 children had become her adopted family in the Gaza Strip. And she stayed with them all the time. She stood in front of the bulldozer in fluorescent clothing. This is a bit of feedback going on here. She stood in front of the bulldozer in fluorescent clothing so that she was perfectly visible. She had a bunch of activists around with her, and she stood there and she tried to stop the bulldozer. The bulldozer kept going until she fell under the blade. It went right over until she was underneath the back of the bulldozer, with all the activists around the bulldozer screaming at him to stop. Then he acknowledged that they were there, so he backed up. He lowered the blade and backed up and flattened her into the road, like he was flattening out the road. It's especially poignant for me because I was actually in Gaza Strip when the bulldozer driver was exonerated of all charges and any wrongdoing. That's just the way they think. Rachel Corey was a hero, ladies and gentlemen. She really was. She was a girl who dedicated her entire life to trying to save children. This is a Facebook page from last year. Israelis celebrating an afternoon of Rachel Corrie pancakes and fun to celebrate her death at the hands of an Israeli bulldozer 10 years previously. It says here, you probably can't read it, but it says one of our supporters has pledged $5 towards Israeli settlements, perhaps for additional bulldozers. This is the mentality of the people that killed Rachel Corrie. Rachel Corrie was protesting the destruction of the houses in Gaza Strip, that encroachment of Israeli settlements that I just showed you that's happening in Gaza Strip. So they voted for Hamas, and Hamas put a stop to the checkpoints and a stop to the destruction of Palestinian homes by Israeli bulldozers. So Israel's decision was to build a wall around the place, which is what they've got now. It's a very high wall, and the Palestinians deal with it the way they know best, by joking about it and just making light of it if they can. Gaza Strip is an area that is 25 miles wide, 25 miles long, 5 miles wide. It's about the size of the Gold Coast. It's home to 1.7 million people. Over 900,000 of them are children. When Israel wages a war against Gaza, it says we're at war with Gaza Strip. No. You need two armies to have a war. In Gaza Strip, you have a population of children. You have the world's largest open-air concentration camp, populated mainly by children, that gets attacked by one of the most sophisticated militaries in the world, with aerial, naval bombardment, ground invasions, tanks, troops, all sorts of stuff, drones, white phosphorus. They straight from the sky. They do everything they can to exterminate these people. That's what it's all about. They don't want peace with the Palestinians. They want the Palestinians gone. They don't recognise that Palestinian exists. If you look at a map now, you won't find Palestine on a map. You'll find Gaza and West Bank. There is no Palestine. And the problem is that Palestinian people can't leave. They can't leave because they have no passports, because they have no country. They're stuck in the world's biggest open-air prison that is subject to a series of slate kill operations, basically. Even if they don't bomb the share of Gaza, then within the next 10, 15 years, you won't be able to live there anyway. That's the problem, because it's just becoming too polluted. This is the West Bank. This is why they voted for Hamas. They got sick of the checkpoints. This is West Bank. There are 560 checkpoints in West Bank. West Bank is, like I said, the size of Sydney western suburbs. It takes up to 6 hours to get through a checkpoint. They have women giving birth on the side of the road in full view of the hospital because the Israeli soldiers won't let them through until they've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. And she's fall back in the queue, and I've got all these other people to process first, and it takes an hour to process each person. And that's just the way they are. They don't care if you're a pregnant woman, they don't care what you are. You're only a Palestinian, you don't matter. In the West Bank, Palestinians aren't allowed to use the main streets. They're only allowed to use the back streets. It's apartheid. It's a worse apartheid system than it is in South Africa. There are people who've been picked up at these checkpoints who are in jail now without charge or trial. There's 4,600 people currently in Israeli prisons without charge or trial. Over 300 of them are children in there without charge or trial. Over 1,000 are elderly people who are in there without charge or trial, without medical assistance. Some people are kept in solitary for several years. That's the situation in Palestine and Israel. It's the only country in the world to have a ministry of detainees and ex-detainees just to deal with the problem of these detainees. And there's so many of them, folks. And the ministry is actually designed like a jail. They've set the whole place out so it's like a prison, so that they never once forget what their purpose is and what they're there for. They never once lose sight of the fact that people are in jail waiting for their release every minute of every day. I went into Gaza in 2012 with this man, Ken O'Keefe. We snuck in through tunnels. It's very hard to get into Gaza Strip. If I wanted to get into Gaza now, I would have to get an invitation from someone in Gaza Strip. I'd have to take that to the Egyptian embassy. The Egyptian embassy would then approve or disapprove my application. I'd have to tell them what day I want to enter, who is looking after me in there. I would need a mentor to stand by me, a translator to stand by me, someone to look after me 24 hours a day. I will open the border for a specific period so I can get through. It will take about 6 hours for me to get through because after all, I've got to walk about 20 metres across the building. It takes 6 hours to do that. And then they will open the border at a specific time for me to get out. That's the only way in and out of Gaza Strip. We thought, well, screw that. Maybe there's a better way. And Ken's got the key to the city. So we thought, well, maybe we're going to juggle a few things. We contacted some rebels And then we caught a plane to Cairo. We got picked up at 4 a.m. in the morning in Cairo. We got driven across the Sinai, dodging checkpoints all the way. Went through some back roads, which is kind of dicey because the Sinai is a very, very lawless area. That was the wild card, really going in there was going across the Sinai because it's full of mercenaries. You just never know what's going to happen in the Sinai desert. And if you disappear in the Sinai, you disappear. You don't come back from the Sinai. It's a big, empty desert. But we did. We got in there. We got to Rafah. We got led to a tunnel by these kids, and these were kids who got us in. These are kids aged between 12 and 18 that got us into Gaza. They led us to this blown up building, and there was this tunnel going down an angle down like this. And the guy just motioned for me to go down, and I'm looking down, and I'm looking at Ken, and Ken's looking at me, and he's going, this isn't a 5-star tunnel like we were promised. And I'm looking at, no, certainly not a 5-star tunnel. I got down to the bottom, and there's this entrance about that high going off, probably from here to that cardboard box away. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, what's around that corner? Could be grave around that corner. I can't even speak the language of these kids. You know, they've led us out to this blown up town. They're telling us to crawl into this hole in the ground. We were expecting a proper 5-star Hamas tunnel because there's big tunnels that go into Gaza. There were then anyway. This tunnel was big enough to drive a truck through. And we found this little hole in the ground these kids have led us to. And I've gotten down to the bottom and he's showing me down a little torch, one of those little pin-light torches, you know. And he says, off you go. And I'm looking at him and going, I wonder if I'm crawling into my own grave. And I went up and I got to that corner and I looked around and I shone the torch and I saw this tunnel that went on for ages. And I thought, well, it's not a grave. It's a good sign. So off we went through this tunnel and we ended up 50 metres below ground. We ended up crawling. The tunnel was about this high. And we're crawling on our hands and knees, dragging our luggage for over an hour and a half through this tunnel. 50 metres below ground, over a kilometre long. We come up into Rafah. Rafah is just shot to pieces, you know. And there's kids everywhere, kids playing in the rubble all through the place. And we ended up getting a cab into Gaza City. We rented a unit, hung out for 10 days, you know, as you do. And we're walking around, we got to this motel, this hotel, a 5-star hotel in Gaza, which is really about 1 star. And we had only stayed here one night, it was too expensive. So we're walking down the street, and the next day we had luggage, we're dragging our luggage down the street, all covered in dust and dirt, and, you know, we're waving to Hamas as we walk past the checkpoints, you know. And no one harassed us, no one complained about it. We got in there, we rented a unit, the last unit that Ken had stayed in while we were there, and we thought, well, we better let the world know we're in Gaza Strip. So we made a video and put it up on YouTube. Hi, we're in Gaza. You know, and we thought, well, we'll let Hamas know where we are, because there's no way Ken can get into Gaza without Hamas knowing, because he's a very well-known activist. And sure enough, the next night, 8 o'clock p.m, just pounding on the door is Hamas security, asking would we please come into the Ministry of Interior the next day and explain our presence in Gaza. We thought, that's pretty good. That's a good sign. They didn't kick the door down and hold us up against the wall with machine guns and arrest us the way they would have in Australia or Israel or England or anywhere else. They said, would we please come in and talk to them the next day? And we said, yeah, we're happy to do that. So we went in and saw them the next day. They confiscated our passports. We didn't get them back for 6 days, which was an interesting feeling, being in Gaza Strip with no passport. Very interesting feeling. But yeah, we managed to survive. We got detained and harassed on our way out. We got interrogated on our way out. Not too bad, but we did get interrogated. But one thing I found while I was in there, this is actually the tunnel that we went through. That's actually the big section. That's the tall bit before it got to the crawling stage. But as you can see, it's just a dirt tunnel. There's no shoring, there's nothing there to hold the tunnel up. And when you're 50 metres underground below Gaza Strip on a war-torn border, it's interesting. It's an interesting feeling, thinking how one bomb could bring the whole tunnel down. But it was really weird. I mean, I was kind of like a third person. That was me coming out. It definitely took it out of us going through this tunnel, folks. I tell you, I blacked that guy's face out so you can't see. That was our luggage as we got through, and this is Gaza Strip. This is what it looks like. These tanks actually on the roof, these are 1,000 litre tanks. They're not allowed to have anything bigger than 1,000 litres because it may be used for bombs. They may be able to hide a rocket launcher in there. That's the way they do it, you know. So these are 1,000 litre tanks, and the only water they're allowed to put in there is seawater. So when you have a shower in Gaza, you're bathing in salt water. It's very difficult to get clean. Any water that comes out of the taps is salt water. The only water you can drink is bottled water. These are the buildings in town. shot to pieces, most of them. This is one of the Samuni family houses, shot to pieces. Even the high-rise might be a bit difficult to see there. There's some major bullet holes in that high-rise. The street lights, these curly light bulbs, it's the only lights they can get for street lights. They can't get normal globes. We built a schoolroom for children while we were in there. We couldn't even get nails to build the desks. It's very, very difficult to get anything in Gaza. This was a couple of the kids said, Max, take a picture of me outside on my porch. And I did. This is a shelter where about 10 or 15 kids live in this shelter. It's just made up of rags, just supported by a wire. That's where they live. Have no parents. They're beautiful people. They're really lovely people. This was the university that I spoke at. Beautiful people, just like everybody else. This girl, Mace, took me out for dinner. Every night I was there, her and her friend. As soon as I spoke at the university, they said they were so impressed with my talk, they would like to take me out to dinner. You notice she's not wearing a burqa. No, had you? None of this stuff. It's not Sharia law. They're not terrorists repressing their women. Normal people doing normal things. In Gaza City, there's a church. There's one building. One side of it is a mosque, and one side of it is a church. It's in the same building. They have they have Muslims on one side and Christians on the other. These people don't hate each other. There's no problem at all. Most of what you're told about these people is pure rubbish. This is my friend Noor. Noor is 8 years old. She has no parents. She's a beautiful, beautiful girl. She's one of the Samuni children. This is the schoolroom that we built for her. Noor kind of adopted me while we were there, as you can see. This other little girl over the side here, this is Amar. Amar has shrapnel behind her left eye. She can't use a normal schoolroom. She can't be in bright light. These are the kids we built the schoolroom for, because these kids are so traumatised that they can't go to normal school, and they have no parents, and they have no voice, and they have no one to look after them. So we did what we could. We built a schoolroom for them. They're beautiful kids. This little girl is such a bright light. She's too young to know that things are really bad. She's really too young to know where she is, and so she still holds a long light, you know. This was the afternoon I was saying goodbye to them when we had to leave. Noor said to me, Max, I can fit in your suitcase. I said, I know you can, darling, and I would love to take you with me. But I couldn't take her with me. This is Omar. Omar was our translator. And if you think they're not doing this on purpose, folks, Omar comes from Dubai. He was born in Palestine, but his parents come from Dubai. They were visiting Palestine. He was born there, then went back to Dubai. He's lived in Dubai for 21 years. And when he turned 21, the government of Dubai said, oh no, now that you're a man, we can't renew your permanent residency visa. Now you'll have to go home. And they sent him back to Gaza Strip. 21 years old, lived in Dubai all his life, had a job as a limousine driver making $4,000 a month. Suddenly he is in Gaza Strip. Never been there before, doesn't know anybody, stuck there. That's the way it is. This is our little buffer zone. They go to the buffer zone to collect concrete, folks, because they can't get concrete in Gaza. So many buildings are destroyed. The only place they can get concrete is to go to the buffer zone and collect blown up buildings, bits of blown up buildings, powder it down so they can reuse the concrete. But of course, doing so, they have to face Israeli guards. But because of what they're dealing with every day, it's just, you know, I don't give a shit, shoot me. It's better than this. I'm just here to get some rocks. If you don't like it, shoot me. I don't care. I don't back down to these people. But you can see how his face has changed in the last 2 years since I left. I got this from his Facebook page the other day. You can see the joy is moving from his face. Look at this picture. That was in 2012, and that's 2014. In 2012, when I got home, I've got him on Skype, and his message on Skype used to be one love. Now it's, I don't give a shit. That's what happens to the people. And it happens to them all the time, folks. It happens to them all the time. Now, in 2008, 2009, there was an operation called Cast Lead. And you think about that, Cast Lead. Okay? The world's biggest open-air prison, 900,000 children just cast lead. Okay, think about it, 900,000 children, that means about 800,000, 700,000 or 800,000 adults in Gaza Strip. Over half of them are women. That puts it down about 350,000 to 400,000 men in Gaza Strip. Less than 1% of them have ever fired a weapon. And yet, because these people voted for Hamas and because sometimes they retaliate against Israeli attacks, the whole place is condemned, the whole place is carpet bombed, and the whole place is designated to live in a prison. White phosphorus is something that they also use against the Gazans all the time, folks. This is the UN school. This is where they did a major attack in 2008, 2009. People ran to the school because the school has UN written on the roof, and it's a safe house. If the place is under attack, this is where you can go to be safe. And the Israelis strafed the school with machine gun fire, and they strafed it with white phosphorus. The use of white phosphorus is a war crime. Make no mistake about it, it is a war crime. White phosphorus, as you can see from this picture here, white phosphorus will, if you get a bit of it on your body, it will suck all the moisture out of your body. If you put water on it to stop the burning, then it gets worse. That's what it does. It's a banned chemical weapon. Why do people do this? Why does Gaza get attacked all the time? Well, what they do, folks, they just send rockets over there all the time, random rockets. While we were there, we had rockets land in central Gaza, land in Gaza City in North Gaza. We had rockets land, Palestine didn't respond. We had 3 fishermen. I woke up one morning, there were fishing boats being shot, fishermen being shot in the boats offshore. Palestine didn't respond. When they do respond, it's with a little handheld rocket or a little pipe that they send into the ground. As soon as they do respond to Israel constantly lobbing bombs over their walls, then Israel just goes crazy, screams victim, and carpet bombs the whole place and conducts a war against Gaza Strip. Like I said, folks, you cannot have a war against Gaza Strip. It takes 2 armies to have a war. And Gaza is a population mainly of children. Of course, Israel has supplied all the weapons it needs to do this because Israel is the eternal victim because of the Holocaust. That's the problem. They wear the Holocaust like a badge on their sleeves. Whether it happened or not, they wear it like a badge on their sleeves, and they use it as an excuse to carry out these type of atrocities against the Palestinian people, which they do all the time. These are Hamas rockets. These are the rockets that Israel complains about all the time. These are sky rockets powered by fertilizer. They're empty pipes, they don't explode. They send them over into Gaza, into Israel when they've just had enough. Here's what they do when they land. How terrible for the Israeli people. One guy complained that he had a rocket go through the back window of his car. He was terrified. We got sound here yet? No sound?
I'll turn this back on.
Because
That's the jack.
These are the Israeli rockets. They say, look, they're terrible. Hamas is sending rockets over to us all the time. Look, we'll show you the rockets. See how many rockets they're sending. But how come you've got them all on a rack there? It's because they don't blow up. These are just pipes. So how do you respond to these pipes being sent over?
Hey!
That was a 500-pound bomb launched into a residential building, killed 26 family members in one blast. That's how they respond to the pipes being sent over. Now I'm going to show you a little bit of footage now. This goes for 6 minutes, so I warn you, it's a little bit confronting. This is footage that's been expunged from the internet. It's very, very difficult to get hold of. There's a little bit of video noise in there. I'm sorry about the video noise. I don't know we're going to get sound very much with this, but I'd really like you to pay special attention to the opening frame, because the opening frame is a rocket landing. And this is the type of rocket that landed when I was there. This is the type of rocket that landed when I was there. These rockets are designed this way to instill terror into the Palestinian people. Okay, that's the one reason these rockets are designed this way. This goes for 6 minutes. Now, if it's too much for people, just get up and leave in 6 minutes. But if you do, just be aware that this is from Operation Cast Lead, which went on day and night for 23 days in Gaza Strip, okay? And again, this is a population of 1.7 million people, 900,000 children. And this was Christmas, 2008, 2009.
شلحوا في فراش. هذا شاش فراش. دو على عناية برضه.
خفيف طلع علي طلعي شوفي هاي ماما كده دي
ارجع ورا. وريني محتاج اطلاق النار. وين هذا مطفوح؟ وين مطفوح الولد؟ استنى شوي.
The last child in that frame that you saw was Ahmed Samuni. I know his family very well. Ahmed was shot twice in the chest and once in the head in close range by Israeli soldiers. Then the rest of his family was hoarded into the room behind these children that you can see here. 97 family members were hoarded into that room, and in the room was shelled by rockets. And they left them lying in the rubble for 4 days before they would allow any ambulance or help to get through. Ahmed was 2 years old. I know it's very confronting, that footage. That's edited down from 45 minutes of footage that I've got of Carsled. It's very confronting. It's been expunged from the internet. But it shows what they're going through. You didn't see any military on that clip. That's a residential city, 1.7 million people, 900,000 children that Israel is attacking like that and they're daring to call it a war. That's what they do, folks. That's what they do. The Samuni children, unfortunately the Samuni land is in the middle of Gaza, so whenever there's a ground invasion, that's where the Israelis land. They control the centre of town, so they can split town into two, and the Samuni family are the ones who usually suffer. But that's just one family. That's just one family. There are so many families that go through the same thing in Gaza Strip all the time, and it's happening because we're not paying attention, folks. And the worst part about it is they have no voice. These people have no voice. They have no international television service. They can't just speak out on the news and tell people what's going on. And they can't leave because they have no passports. They can't immigrate anywhere. My friend Omar, one of his greatest wishes is to immigrate to Australia. But he can't because he doesn't come from anywhere. You need to come from somewhere before you can immigrate to another country. That's what they've done. And again, the Jews are the ones who get the blame for it all. They're not Jews, they're Khazarians. Now, most of the Semitic Jews are the most downtrodden people in all of Israel. You know, that's just the way it is. And again, folks, it's a Galilean dialectic. It's to create terrorists. Because you get a young child, and you kill his mother in front of him and he cries. You come back a year later and kill his father in front of him and he cries. Come back the next year, kill his brothers and sisters, he cries, but a little bit less. And you do it again the next year and he doesn't cry anymore. And after a few times, he doesn't feel anything. And all he wants to do is go and strap a bomb to himself and walk into Israel and take out as many of these terrorist scum who killed his family as he can. Because without that, we wouldn't have a war on terror. We wouldn't have this police state being built around us, you know. Israel and Palestine, the situation in Palestine is being used to inflame the Arab world. They're just not taking the bait. They've been trying to coax these people into World War III for the last 4 years, but they're just not doing it. And I think the Arabs have shown an incredible amount of restraint in the face of this. In the face of what they face every day against the people who want to bring them freedom and democracy. They've shown an incredible amount of restraint, but they won't come to the party. Well, we've done this to Gaza, we've done it to Palestine, we've gone to Egypt, we've gone to Libya, we've gone to Syria. They just won't come to the party. Iran just will not come to World War III. So what can we do now? Well, let's go to Ukraine and we'll cut off all of Russia's pipelines and see if we can coax Russia into coming to World War III. Because if we don't start World War III soon, the whole economy is going to collapse. That's the way America thinks. That's what it's all about. America thrives on war, and so does Israel. You know, and why am I bringing you all this up? This is another one. I've got to show you this as well. If you think this isn't being done on purpose, folks, this is another favourite. Cluster bombs. Cluster bombs, I use these everywhere. I use these in Iraq, Afghanistan, and in Gaza and Palestine. And if you think it isn't being done on purpose, these are very dangerous bombs, folks, and there's an unexploded cluster bomb on the ground. What they look like when they've landed and they don't explode. So, okay, what happens? We send these cluster bombs in, we cover the ground in cluster bombs, we blow up all these people, and then there's all these unexploded cluster bombs. So what do we do? The UN comes in and we'll send in food aid packages to save the children. And there's a food aid package next to a cluster bomb. Which one do you think the kids go and pick up? And there's the result. Happening right now with your tax dollars, folks. Any country that supports Israel, this is what's going on. Any country that supports war. If you've got a country that's supporting the war in Afghanistan or Iraq or any of this stuff that our government's supporting, our government is supporting terrorism. Because that's what it's doing. If you pay your taxes to this government, this is what you're supporting. And still the children smile in the face of all of this. Look at this little boy. He lost 5 brothers and sisters and both his parents in one day in that bombing that I just told you about in the Samuni family house. Lost all of them, but still he can smile. Hi Max, great to see you, you know. These are great kids, folks. The Palestinian people are honestly some of the most beautiful, most generous, most kindest people I've ever met. And they are trapped in a living hell that happens because we're not paying attention. And there's so many of these kids. There's so many of these kids that have been so brutalised by these governments, folks. And that's what Israel's for. Because Israel isn't about the Jews, it's not about Semitism, it's not about Judaism, it's about the Khazars wanting a home, and it's about creating instability in the Middle East. Because Israel wants a bigger plan. They have a bigger plan for Greater Israel. This is Israel at the moment. Well, you could take a little bit off that because it still hasn't got Gaza or the West Bank completely. But that's Israel at the moment. It would like a little bit more land. And maybe a little bit more. Not much. But that's the plan for Greater Israel. And it just keeps going. And we go through all the Middle East, trying to create these problems, trying to create this conflict, but just the Arabs just won't come to the party. So now we're trying to do it with Russia and the powers in Europe. And we do it everywhere, folks. This is Libya. We really helped those guys out, didn't we? 2007, 2011. Looks like a big improvement to me. Bring on democracy. You know where this is? Looks like a pretty progressive nation, black and white back in the 50s. Pretty progressive nation. You know where that is? Afghanistan, before we got involved. This was a progressive Western nation. Then we thought we'd go in and free the people. Look at Afghanistan now. Pumps out more opium than it ever has since the coalition of the willing, or should I say the coalition of the criminally insane, took over the place. It pumps out more opium than it ever has. We know where the global drug problem comes from, folks. It comes from our governments. Here's an Iraqi girl who misses her mother so much she draws a picture of her every night so she can sleep inside her belly since we freed her country. And where they get the money to do it from, folks, they get it from your tax dollars, and that's where they get their money from. They just make it up. They just churn it out as much as they want. Makes you sick, doesn't it? And people don't do anything about it because they're trained not to. People are given a false version of reality. That's why people don't do anything about it. People think these guys are terrorists, but they're not. Unfortunately, we're all programmed, most of society is programmed by the news. That's the situation we've got. And you try to tell the kids about it, they're a little bit too distracted these days. They're just texting each other as they walk into the meat grinder. I have a friend who went to a birthday party the other day. He said kids at the birthday party were sitting across the room texting each other. Like, you know, it's incredible. Transhumanism, you see where it's all going, folks? It's incredible, the programming. You know? This guy had it right, eh? The people will believe what the media tells them they believe. Not even what the media tells them to, what the media tells them they believe. And they do. So why is this important? Why is this important to what's going on in our country? Why do I just spend so much time on Palestine and Gaza when we've got real situations here? Well, why I did it is because what you see in Palestine and Gaza is a system of warehousing and surplusing human beings that will be applied to every country. If we don't pay attention to what's going on in Gaza and the West Bank, then the way of Palestine will be the way of the world. And we're seeing it in this country now already. Look at the warehousing and surplusing of refugees that we have in our detention centres. Look what they did to the Aboriginal people of this country, or the original people of this country. Look what they've been through at the hands of this government. You want to see surplusing and warehousing? It's right there, right in front of our faces. Australia's got one of the only acts of genocide, if not the only act of genocide ever carried out in the world, was the extermination of the original people of Tasmania. I think the last one died around the turn of the last century. That's the only case, the only true case of complete genocide that's ever happened in the world, right here in Australia. You know? And that's what's happening in Gaza Strip, genocide. They tell you the Palestinians don't exist. Palestine is no country, and they will keep going until there are no Palestinians left. That's what they're doing, and they're not Jews who are doing it. They're Khazars. That's the thing. It's been very clever the way they've hijacked the whole Jewish system to make everybody blame the Jews. And the Jews are the most downtrodden and repressed people in all of Israel. So I'm telling you this because, yeah, that's what we've got, folks. Warehousing and surplusing, and that's where we're going. You wait and see. That's what's going to happen in this country unless we pay attention. So is this guy going to save you, you think? You reckon he's got all the answers? I reckon he's a fucking idiot. Maybe not a complete idiot. Actually, I think he's probably smarter than we give him credit for. He's certainly a corporate whore. He certainly knows what he's doing. He's certainly selling this country down the river. He wants to log the Franklin River now in Tasmania, cutting a hole through the barrier reef for the biggest gas hub or coal port in the world. Where's the coal coming from? It's coming from the Darling Downs, folks. That's where that's coming from. This government is not going to help you, folks. This government is not going to help you. If you want to know how corrupt this government is, ask this lady. Does anyone think she's actually guilty? Anyone here think she's guilty? Good to see. Because she's not. She's absolutely innocent, and not only is she provably innocent, but also the provably guilty party is Macquarie Bank and the Australian Federal Police. They've been smuggling drugs through our airports for a long time. And if you go to a website called expendable.tv, you will find enough evidence to put the entire Australian Federal Police Force in jail. And the Australian government, the Howard government, and Macquarie Bank. All of these people. That's why she's still in Bali. That's why she's got a gagging order on her, because they know that if she speaks, she's going to expose the whole damn thing, simply because of the high profile she's got. All she's got to do is go on television and say, go to www.expendable.tv, and the whole thing's going to be blown wide open. And really, I think it's doubtful she'll ever make it back to Australia. I would be surprised if she survives to make it back to Australia, because I think the Australian government would very much like to have Schapelle Corby out of the picture. So I don't think the government's going to help you folks. The Americans thought this guy was going to say, here I come to save the day. Oh yeah, first black man, he's going to come along and make everything right, isn't he? And really it was just, your turn, brother, your turn, make sure the opium keeps flowing. And that's what it does. The whole American economy's run on drugs, folks. The whole American economy's been run on drugs for a long time. If they stopped the drug trade in America, there would be no economy. War and drugs is the only thing that keeps it going. In God we trust, gold, oil and drugs. That's America. And they must have been laughing when people voted him in and actually thought there was going to be change. Because there isn't, not from these guys. They just keep you like this, folks. That's what they want. They want you under their thumb. They want you doing and thinking what they say you should do and think. And that's where we're heading. Transhumanism, the whole thing. The digital reality they want us all locked into. So what's the answer, folks? Well, the answer is to start thinking outside the box. The answer is to start implementing solutions yourself in your own life. Because that's what the solutions are. And I finish every radio show that I do with the two words in Lakesh, because we can't go on like this. That's where we are at the moment. That's most people's mind today. Everything's cool. What's it like outside today? Might go swimming. You know, they're just not noticing what's going on around them. But I finish every show with in Lakesh, which means I am another yourself. We are each other. I've done so much talk on this on the show. I've often spoken how your body is a biological computer. You're downloading a frequency from the field around you. You experience as you. Everybody is completely unique, but everybody is the same. We all come from the same source. You look at the work of people like Bruce Lipton. I think Bruce was mentioned yesterday, or someone mentioned Bruce Lipton, The Power of Belief. Fantastic book, and he's done some fantastic research. Dr. Lipton has shown that your body literally downloads frequencies. It downloads from the field. You know, your environment is what affects you. It's not your genes, it's your environment. And you download a frequency. If you were to take a kidney out of my body and put it in your body, you would start experiencing me, not because the kidney has memory, but because the kidney downloads that frequency from the field. So it's out here. Consciousness exists out here in the field. It's not local to your body. And it's the same for everybody. We're all in this together. We're all different biological computers experiencing one aspect of the same consciousness from a different perspective. So why would we invalidate other people so much? I want people to see my view as valid. Why would I invalidate yours? Because your view is just as valid as mine. Because you're the same as I am. You're the same computer that I am. Different computer, but you're downloading a frequency from the same consciousness. So we're all in this together. We're all here as one. We are literally one single consciousness experiencing itself subjectively, just the way Bill Hicks said in his comedy routine from years ago. Boy, did that guy have it nailed. He really did. But you can do this. You can be one with all it is, and you can be completely unique. Absolutely unique and individual on yourself, because there is not another biological computer like this one. There's no one who can experience reality from the same perspective that I do. No one will ever be the same as me. So knowing that, and knowing that you're all like that, why would you consider yourself to be anything but perfect? Because you're perfect at being you. And being you is what you're supposed to be, obviously, because that's who you are. That's what you're here to experience. You're here to experience life from that unique perspective that is you. So don't ever view yourself as being of any less worth than anybody else, because we're all in this together. And this is the way I live my life. And when you can live your life with that understanding, suddenly all the barriers between people break down, all the division is gone, and there is the solution. Because we live in a very, very divided society, which is what allows all of this to keep going. The social pathogens, the religious pathogens, the economic pathogens, the way we judge ourselves, the way we're separate from each other, and we're trained to be separate from each other, and we're kept as divided as possible. Class division, race division, religious division, everything they could think of to keep people divided. There's the solution. We've got to start seeing ourselves properly. so that we can see other people properly, see other people as valid, and that's how we change the world. We really do, and we can do it. This is something I wanted to share with you as well. Everything that's happening in this country, they tell us to support this economic model, to support the standard of living in Australia. Has anyone heard about this? Yeah. You've heard about the huge oil find at Cooper Pedy? 12% of the world's oil has been found at Cooper Pedy. More oil than Saudi Arabia. Yet they're still cutting this coal pool. They're still ripping up coal seam gas line, tearing down the forests, doing everything they can, tearing uranium out of the ground. We've got more oil than anybody else in the world. We've got less population than everybody else in the world. This is a commonwealth country, is it not? If the commonwealth of this country, even a small percentage of it, was actually passed down to the common people of the country, this would be one of the most opulent lifestyles on the planet. We should have the highest standard of living in the world because we live in a country with one of the most resources in the world and one of the lowest populations on earth. So we should have the highest standard of living in the world, but we don't. We have one of the highest costs of living in the world. So if the government is really about the economy, if the economy is real, they really want to help the people out, why don't they tell the people about this? Why doesn't anybody know about this? Why hasn't the mainstream media reported this at all? This will say goodbye to OPEC, say goodbye to Arab control of the oil. It's all over. We've got the whole shebang. We've got more oil than anybody in this country. Why aren't people hearing about it? That's why. Because that is the staple diet of the banksters who control our governments. That's why. And what about this? What about this stuff? The outlawing of this plant constitutes a crime against humanity. Every government that supports the prohibition of this plant is a criminal government and should be dismissed immediately. Any politician who supports the continued prohibition of this plant is a criminal, needs to be held in abuse of office and dismissed immediately. This is not a debatable point. This is mankind's companion plant. This plant has been our companion plant for over 10,000 years. This plant cures almost everything. I'm not allowed to say it cures cancer, am I? Well, it does. It cures cancer. I don't give a shit if I'm allowed to say it or not. I cured a friend of mine of cancer with this plant. I cured myself of a melanoma that was on my back. There are people here that have seen it. Ben Stewart saw it. Grant saw it. People saw this pea-sized melanoma, ugly, angry thing on my back. 2 applications of cannabis oil. Gone, dissolved, completely disappeared. I've got a friend who's got Lyme's disease. 10 grams of oil, cured, completely cured of Lyme's disease. This plant cures you, folks. I think people should go home and grow this plant. And no, I'm not suggesting anybody break the law. I'm suggesting the government stop breaking the law by enacting legislation which causes harm to people. Because really there's only one law, isn't there? God's law. I can sum God's law up in 3 words, 8 letters, do no harm. That's it, do no harm. That is the law. And all legislation does is cause harm. So who broke the law? Who's breaking the law in all of these cases? It's the government. Government creates crime. Government has created all of the situations that we face. And that's the problem when dealing with these situations as well. We're always addressing symptoms. You know, we look at the whaling problem. We look at the problem of the prohibition of cannabis. We start petitioning the government about that. We start petitioning people to stop whaling. We start petitioning people about the homelessness. We start petitioning to stop the war, to stop the pollution. All of this stuff. These are all symptoms, folks. None of these is a problem in itself, although they may be problems in themselves, but they're all symptoms of a larger problem, which is the government corruption, which enacted the legislation which allows these symptoms to be created and to be perpetuated. So why does this government corruption continue? It continues because we live in a divided society, because we don't know who we are. So that's where the focus has to be. The focus has to be here. It has to be in your heart. Because if you can understand who you are, in Lakesh, and live your life in that manner and start breaking down the barriers with the people around you, we can change the world in one day. But we can't do it if we're looking for a silver bullet. We can't do it by operating within legal parameters. So you look at the system is etheric, it's a meme, it's just an idea. It's someone's idea that this is the way the world should be. You know, but it's etheric. It's a mindset. This perspective that we have to be under the authority of somebody else. It's just a meme. somebody else's idea. And that's what our education system's for. It trains us to stay locked into this idea. And when we try to combat the idea, we try to combat it on a physical means. We see we've got this energetic mean, this idea, which controls the physical world through paper and legal bullshit. And then we try to find our way out of it. We start using the paper and trying to do all this paper stuff to escape the paper-based fictional world. We're not realising that it's a meaning, it's an idea. You can't work in the physical to address something which only exists in the ether, even though it's etheric, it controls the physical, but you can't work in the physical to control it. You've got to deal with it in the ether, which means you've got to change your mindset. You've got to change your perspective of who and what you are. And you can use the legal system to do it too if you want. If you're really locked into law and you believe the legal system is real, you know this guy? Anybody know this guy, Vic Simpson? Beautiful man, lovely man, good friend of mine. But if you know how the legal system works, you can use the legal system to free yourself from it by simply understanding who and what you are, you know? This is a wonderful picture. And this is another thing, entheogens. Ayahuasca plants like this. If you talk to people like Graham Hancock will tell you that the banning of entheogens is also one of the biggest crimes that's ever been perpetrated against humanity. I tend to believe that he's right. I really do. I think that these are very, very creative plants, and these are plants that help us express who we are. Perhaps they were put there for that very reason. He believes the same thing. But this is who you are, folks. Does anyone know this term, sui generis? Sui generis? Being the only example of its kind, unique of his or her or its own kind, existing alone, consisting of one entity or part or aspect of an individual. That's what you are, folks. You are sui generis. You have no peers. There's only one of you. And that's a legal word. That exists in the legal system. Hi, who are you? I'm sui generis. Who are you? Oh, you're sui generis too. You know? This is why when I put that letter to Jared Blair, so I'm going to hold you in breach of trust. I want you to show cause why you shouldn't be prosecuted. But I can't speak for all you guys and all that. I can only speak for me, because I'm sui generis. And I can't judge Jared Blair as being bad for what he did, because he's sui generis too. I have no jurisdiction over him, but he has no jurisdiction over me. If you're sui generis, only being one of a kind and unique, it means you have no peers. So therefore, how can you be subject to the laws of your peers? You have no peers. That's it. You can say to these people, I'm unique. I'm a completely unique expression of creation, a totally sentient life form of my own. I'm sui generis. If you can explain to me how you have jurisdiction over the vessel that I inhabit, then we can move forward. But until then, I can't, because I'm sui generis. That's who I am. That's who everybody is. I'm completely unique. If you can show me that I'm not, we can move forward. But until then, we can't, because that's who I am. But you can only do that if you know who you are. You know what I mean? It's all in here. You've got to change your perspective, change your mindset. That's the silver bullet. So everyone's going down the free man rabbit hole. Everyone's looking for a way out. Everyone's looking for this piece of paper that they can fill out, which is they can send off to the government, and it's going to establish their freedom for them. It's not going to work, folks. It's here. You know, you've got to understand that you're free here, and you don't have to work within that system. You've got to go over the concept of ownership, all of this stuff. If you really want to think about ownership, if you really believe the legal system is real, it's not just fiction, and you believe that ownership's real, well, hey, treat it with the original people of this land, because they're the only people who own this land. The government of this country doesn't own this country. They never have. I don't agree anybody does, but if anybody does, it's the original people. And you need to treat it with them. I treated with the original people back in 2011, because they're the only owners of this country. There's a way out. That's the way out. If you're going to work within legal parameters. If we're going to change our mindset and adjust our spiritual perspective so that we know we're all sui generis, we don't even need that. We can step above the whole thing. But many people can't. They have to operate within legal parameters, and so that's the way they need to look at it. They need to look at the original people and see what they're doing and see what they're saying about it, because that's the key. That's the way out. And sui generis is the way out as well. Knowing who and what you are. That's the biggest thing that you have, because that is the main cause of all of our problems. We've forgotten ourselves, folks. We've given our authority away to public trustees that we elect to manage our infrastructure for us. And all these people are doing is stealing from us. And they continue to steal from us because we live in divided societies, trained into pathological thinking, trained into an education system which makes us believe authority is real. We think Superman's going to come and save us when it all gets bad, and we judge ourselves by fictional parameters that have been given to us by somebody else. That's the problem. So this is what I want to do this year, the Full Circle Project. And I don't have all the answers with this either, folks. I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend to have all the answers. But what I see is there's so many groups out there. So many groups start, and I think, okay, now we've got this group, we're going to change the world. And people are going to join this group, and I think because I've joined this group and I've bought the DVD, and I go to a lecture once a month, and I have someone over intellectualise to me that the world's going to change. You know, you go home and I think they've made a difference. Well, you haven't. You've got to get involved yourself. You really do. And that's what I want to do with this project. I want to create a platform whereby people can get involved in their own communities. There's a lot of goals I want to do with this platform. There's a lot of things I want to achieve with it. Some people tell me it's too many. But this is what I want to do, to embark on initiatives to bring mankind full circle back to their natural state of abundance through positive common sense action undertaken by the people themselves. It's got to be done by the people. You've got to want to be involved, folks. And there's groups you can sign up to that we're going to have out here today. There's action groups you can sign up to. Mark's going to be talking to you about treating. You're going to have Jerry come and talk to you about action groups that they're forming. There's lots of things we can do to get involved. Get involved at the grass level. Get your kids off soft drinks, folks. Get your kids thinking clearly as early as you can. Get this information to them. Keep their minds active. Let them know what the global situation really is. And strive to make a difference yourself, you know. To highlight the effects of rampant modernisation and the loss of national and shareholdership traditions has had, both upon the collective human psyche and upon our home, the earth. Think about how we progress, folks. Think about how nature progresses. You ever heard of Fibonacci sequence? Most people have heard of Fibonacci sequence. You know how it works? You know, you get the numbers, you know, you get the previous number, you add it to the present number, and you get the next number. You know what I mean? When you get 1 and 1 is 2, and 2 and 1 is 3, and 3 and 2 is 5, and then 5 and 3 is 8, and it goes on like that. Essentially what you do is, what does that say? 5. Essentially what you say is, I missed all the other prompts, did I? Thought it was an hour. Essentially what you do is you get the future, or you get the present, and you combine it with the past to create the future. That's the way Fibonacci sequence works. And it works replete throughout nature. If you look at the way a plant grows, a plant will grow with 1, then 2, then 3, then 5, then 8. That's the way it grows. It's all Fibonacci sequence. And this is how consciousness works. If we get our conscious knowledge, the knowledge we build the future, the great technology, the wonderful things we've invented, don't throw all this away. But don't throw the past away as well. If we combine this wonderful present that we've got with the past and the knowledge of the past, we create a viable future. That's how it works, Fibonacci sequence. But what we're doing is we're eliminating the past and we're replacing it with the future that we want, which is take us down a transhumanist pathway. Pathways towards global imprisonment is what we're doing. I'm going to try to rush through this. So as I said, to blend the old ways with the new, we've got to do that. To promote the implementation of workshops designed to re-educate people on a grassroots level in their own communities, folks. Because everybody's got a community and you know what's right for your community. I don't know what's right for your community, but you might. And you might have a workshop or a venue or something you want to do to try to spread this word out in your community. If you don't have the funding to do it, hopefully through the Full Circle Project we can fund that. We can fund initiatives right around the globe so that all communities can get involved and we can all link up together as one global movement, create a global wave. That's what we need to do. There's lots of things that I've got for the Full Circle Project. Many people, and also I want to create platforms whereby we can start conversing with political leaders in local communities and start talking to them about trust law. I've got to hijack them a bit. Come on stage. We had a tree planting initiative. You're a mayor. Come and welcome us all to your community. By the way, do you know that you're a public trustee? Work that out in front of people. Get them to understand what their place in society is, because that's all they are, folks. They're public trustees. And as far as I can see, they're all in breach of trust, the whole lot of them. But they're going to continue to be in breach of trust until we stand up and do something about it. And all of these initiatives I've only got a few of them listed here. You know, I've got a lot more. If you go to the website is fullcirclenow.net. You'll find a link from my website, thecrowhouse.com. You'll find a link to the Full Circle Project. Many people have looked at this and they said, you've got too many objectives. There's too much stuff there. You need to focus on one symptom. So, well, no, I don't. Because I think we can achieve all of this. And that's another thing I want to do. I want to create a fund. I want to buy back the Amazon rainforest so the corporations can't rape it. Because they're continuing to rape it, folks. I went over there, I was in Peru last year. I flew over an area where I found 30,000 hectares of illegal clearing that's been cleared for palm oil. I would have brought you a video, but I just don't have time to show it to you. 30,000 hectares illegally cleared for palm oil. The palm oil destroys the soil, turns it into a desert, and they move on to the next area. Palm oil's in everything. Don't like rice with palm oil in it, folks, so I guess you can't shop anymore. You know. But it's in almost everything, and they're destroying the Amazon to do it. They're turning the Amazon into a desert through the palm oil industry. And it just goes on and on and on. I've got so many objectives I want to go through, and people say it's too much, and I say no, it's not, because every one of these objectives is the result of government corruption through legislation that's been put in place by government, and this happens because the people are disempowered. So every one of these objectives can be fixed by default as soon as we remember who we are and we choose to be empowered. Get over this. Get over wars for corporations. Start being civil disobedience. This guy, this guy really knows. Civil disobedience is not our problem. Our problem is civil obedience. Our problem is that people all over the world have obeyed the dictates of leaders of their governments and gone to war, and millions have been killed because of disobedience. Our problem is that people are obedient all over the world in the face of poverty and starvation and stupidity and war and cruelty. Our problem is that people are obedient while the jails are full of petty thieves and while the grand thieves are running the country. That's our problem. And it is. And you think you can deal with that through legal means? You can't. But if we stand up as one people, one respectful people, we could change this in a day. What if we did a people's mandate? We the people hereby mandate that you, our government, our elected trustees, implement the following changes. You have 30 days to comply. If you do not comply, you have to change your right to govern. You will be required to step down. This is our will. What do they do against that? It's not a petition. We're not asking them. It's a mandate. We are mandating you, our public trustees, to carry out our will. If you're even going to pretend this is a democracy, and the democracy is so great, really it's just mob rule. Okay, we're the mob, and we're going to rule. And I think I'm getting thrown off.
We have the means to get back. Don't ask the government for help. That's the help they give you. That's who you are. My name's Maxwell Egan. Thanks for listening, folks. Free Palestine.